The theme I've been asked to talk about today is silence is the highest teaching. Alistair said it slightly in a different way. Silence is the greatest teacher, which is also true. Silence is Bhagavan's real nature, and that he is both the teacher and the teaching. But because the words I was given was silence is the highest teaching, what exactly is meant by highest in this context, what I would take it to mean is silence is the ultimate teaching. I think it's also true to say that silence is the most fundamental teaching. And I will start with that idea, but it's the most fundamental teaching first. When we first come to Bhagavan, we may be attracted by his form, by his stories we've heard about him, or by his teaching, whatever. But the reason Bhagavan appeared in human form in this world was to give us teachings. And he gave us teachings through words. But in order to understand those words, we need an inner clarity. And that inner clarity comes from silence. So in that sense, I think silence is the most fundamental teaching. But Bhagavan's teachings are of no use without the silence. All that he said in words, it will be like water off a duck's back. It will mean nothing to us without the inner clarity given by his silence. And he wrote one verse about silence in which he defined silence. It's just a one-line verse. The verse is, Monum ul erum oru mori arul nileye. That is, silence is arul nileye, means the state of grace. Oru mori, the one language, or oru there literally means one, but it can also mean the peerless or the unequaled, the unique language, ul erum, but rises within. So I think what Bhagavan is pointing to there is silence is there in the depth of the heart of all of us. Silence is grace. The very fact that Bhagavan is always in our heart as I makes him always accessible to us, always the nearest and dearest to us. There's not, whatever type of being we may be, whether we're a human being or an animal, whether we're an ant or a snake or a tiger or whatever we may be, or a deva or whatever other forms we may take, whatever form we take, we experience that form as I. I am this body. But in that mixed feeling, I am the body, that is the ego. That is the root of all the problems. But in that mixed feeling, there is a real element and an unreal element. The real element is I, which is the pure self-awareness. The unreal element is the body, which is just an insentient object. Therefore, the ego is called chit, jada, granti. Chit means awareness, that is the I. Jada means insentience, non-awareness, non-consciousness, unconsciousness. That is the body. Granti means the knot. So when these two get mixed together, a knot has no independent existence. A knot is formed when two pieces of string are tied together. But it's not even two pieces of string. You can make a knot out of one piece of string. So actually, there is only one, but we've got this one in a knot. And there seem to be two. There seems to be the awareness and the insentient objects. This confusion, this is the ego. But in this ego cannot rise or shine without the real element, the chit, the awareness. That is Mona. So Bhagavan is always shining in us as I. He's always making himself available to us. And his presence within us is not clear. That is, we all know I am. That's the one thing which is clear to all of us. But what this I am is, that is not clear to us. We know that we are, we don't know what we are. We confuse ourselves with something but we are not, which is this body. In one sense, Bhagavan is perfectly clear to us. His presence as I is perfectly clear to us. In another sense, it is obscured by our mistaking I to be something other than what it actually is, mistaking ourselves to be something other than what we actually are. But it's always there, and it is clear to the extent we attend to it. In one verse in Guru Vacha Kavai, Bhagavan refers to, people often say, oh, God is not gracious to me, I'm suffering so much, why God isn't kind to me, why God isn't gracious to me. Bhagavan says, the accusation of not being gracious can never be applied to God, because God is always shining in each and every one of us as I. The one who is at fault for not being gracious is the ego, because the ego is always looking away from Bhagavan, looking at other things, looking at the material, this material world, looking for happiness outside itself. So we are constantly turning our back on Bhagavan, so to speak. Bhagavan is always there in our heart as I, but instead of just calmly and peacefully attending to him, contemplating on him, being as he is, we are rising as this ego and attending to other things. So we are the ones who are lacking grace. Bhagavan is never lacking grace. Bhagavan's grace is always there. Bhagavan's grace, we cannot do anything to earn Bhagavan's grace, because you can't earn what is already there. When you have a treasure, when all the wealth in the world is yours, you can't do anything to earn it because it's already yours. So also, Bhagavan's grace is already ours. It's our real nature. So there's nothing we can do to qualify for Bhagavan's grace. But in order to appreciate Bhagavan's grace, all we have to do is to turn within. And then we will recognize that grace alone exists. And grace, as Bhagavan says in that verse, what is grace? Grace is silence. Grace is our real nature. But we have to turn within to attend to it. Bhagavan had given his teaching, because our attention is we're always directing our attention outward. It's necessary for Bhagavan, the silence that is ever dwelling in our heart at the very core of our being, it's necessary for that silence to appear outwardly in the form of Bhagavan to tell us to turn back within. That is the purpose. Why Bhagavan appeared in this human form? For one simple purpose, to tell us where we should look, to tell us to turn our attention back towards ourselves, to turn our attention back to the silence which is always in our heart. So Bhagavan's teaching in words and his teaching in silence, they are not two different things. They're not in any way contradictory. His words are there to point us back to the silence, which is ever there in our heart, which is ever our true nature. That is why he appeared in human form, in order to turn our attention back within. So all of Bhagavan's teachings in words, the essence and import of all his teachings are turn back within, see yourself. That's what Bhagavan's teachings are all about. I mean, that's what his verbal teachings are all about. But we are very, very deeply deluded. This ahankara, this ego, is so deeply entrenched. To us, Bhagavan sometimes describes the ego as the thought, I am the body. People don't fully understand what Bhagavan means by this word thought, because we tend to think of thought as a mental chatter that is going on in our mind. According to Bhagavan, everything other than the pure self-awareness that we actually are is a thought. The ego itself is a thought. The whole world is thought. It's all a projection of the ego. So everything is a thought. So when Bhagavan says, the thought I am this body, he's not just talking about the superficial verbal thought. It is a deep-rooted experience. Is there anyone here who doesn't experience himself as a body? Each one of us feels, I'm sitting here. Everything else is related to, all space is related to what? The central point in space is always here. And here is where the body that I take to be myself is. Our whole experience is centered in this experience I am this body. It's so deep-rooted. Our ajnana, our ignorance, our self-ignorance is so deeply rooted. I can't remember, I lost the track of what I was saying. Anyway, this is so deeply rooted. It is necessary, that's why Bhagavan had to appear outside to say, oh yeah, I know what I was saying. Why? Though Bhagavan's teachings are very, very simple, they're also very, very subtle. And it's difficult for us to grasp. So long as we experience ourselves as this body, it's very difficult for us to fully grasp the simplicity of Bhagavan's teachings. Bhagavan's teachings can be explained in very, very few words. But we continue asking questions. You take any book about Bhagavan, people are constantly asking Bhagavan questions. And now after Bhagavan has passed away, we're all still asking questions. We're all still trying to understand, because we're trying to understand with our intellect. And the intellect is a function of the mind. The root of the mind is the ego, which is this confused self-awareness. So we are looking through darkness to see light, as it were. The more we allow our mind to go outwards, the more confused, the more obscured everything will be. The more we turn our attention within, the clearer everything will be. So though Bhagavan's teachings are very, very simple, they're also very, very subtle and very, very deep. It's not easy for us to clearly understand Bhagavan's teaching. And if we are sincerely trying to follow Bhagavan's path and constantly reading and reflecting about his teachings, the meaning of his words becomes more and more clear. It seems to us that we have nothing more to learn. We've understood Bhagavan's teachings. We have understood to a certain extent, but the full clarity has not dawned. The full clarity will dawn only when the ego is consumed, because the full clarity is the pure self-awareness, the state of grace, the one language which is always rising within. That is that full clarity. That is what we're seeking. But the more we turn our attention within, when you turn to look at the light, everything is clarified. So the more we are turning our attention back to see the light in our own heart, the more inner clarity will blossom within us. And it is by that clarity that we're able to understand the real meaning or the real depth. We're able to get a really clear understanding of Bhagavan's teachings. So that clarity is his silence. And that is what enables us to understand the words. But the words are not an end in themselves. The words are a means. The words are there to turn our attention back within. So Bhagavan's silence and his verbal teachings are inseparable. His verbal teachings will come to an end only when the ego comes to an end. And then what remains is what is always there, which is silence. But so long as we are in this, so long as we rise as an ego and allow our attention to go outwards, his teachings in words and his silence are inseparable. It's the silence which is giving us the ability to understand the word. And not only, if we've really understood Bhagavan, we may think we've understood, but if we've really understood Bhagavan, for instance, take one simple teaching of Bhagavan. Bhagavan said there's not any happiness in any of the objects of the world, in any phenomena, there is no happiness. But we're all continuing to seek happiness outside ourselves. Outside ourselves doesn't mean only in the material world, even in the pleasures, the things that we enjoy within our own mind. According to Bhagavan, everything other than pure self-awareness is external to ourselves. It's extraneous to ourselves. So it's outside. So even our intellectual pleasures or whatever pleasures we seeking happiness in anything other than ourselves, it means we haven't clearly understood what Bhagavan has said. We've understood superficially, at a superficial level of our mind, but the understanding is not deep, it's not really clear, because if we were really clear, but there's no happiness in anything else, but happiness is our real nature, why would we ever rise as an ego to attend to anything else? So the whole process of following Bhagavan's teaching is a process of deepening clarity. The more we are clear, but the truth, the happiness, everything is there within us as ourself, the more love we will have to turn within. And love is the key. Why? Everyone says, oh, this path Bhagavan has taught self-inquiry, it's so difficult. Though we know it's a very simple path, all we have to do is be self-attentive, turn our attention back. It seems to us to be so difficult. Why? Because we don't really want to follow it. We have a little bit of liking to follow it. We have much more liking to continue to experience phenomena, to continue seeking happiness outside ourselves. So the more we follow Bhagavan's teaching, the more the clarity will be there, but the clear understanding of his words, the clear conviction, the truth of his words, that everything is there within, and thus the more love will arise in us to turn within. So this is why I say silence is the most fundamental teachings. It's the very basis of Bhagavan's teachings. All his teachings in words are built on that foundation of silence. And silence is the highest teaching also, in the sense that it's the ultimate teaching. Ultimately, Bhagavan's words cannot reveal the truth. Nothing can reveal the truth. He says in the final verse of Ekatma Panchakam, he says, Epodum uludu av ekatma vastuve. That is, what always exists is that ekatma vastu. Vastu means the substance, the reality. Atma is oneself. Ekatma vastu, the one substance which is ourself. That is what alone exists always. And when he made it into a Kali Vemba version, he added a small clause before that, Tana Doliyar, that means by its own light. So what always exists by its own light is only that ekatma vastu. Only our own self is what actually exists, our own real nature, and it's always shining by its own light. We don't need any other light to know I am. To know other things, we need the light of the mind, which is a mere reflection or distortion of the original light of self-awareness. Then he says, Apodu avvastuve adi guru sepadu seppi teriomar seidanarel. That is, if even the Adi Guru, the Adi Guru means the original Guru, is that's referring to Dakshinamurti, made that vastu, that reality, that real substance, ourself, apodu, then he made it known sepadu seppi. Sepadu means without saying, seppi is saying, so saying without saying. He made it known. In other words, he made it known through silence. When even he was able to make it known only through silence, Ebba seppi terivipa seppu. Say, who can make it known by saying? So ultimately, even Bhagavan's words cannot reveal the truth. Bhagavan's words can point us in the right direction. Bhagavan's words can give us the love to turn within. But ultimately, the final teaching, the ultimate teaching is only through silence. Why? Because silence is the reality. Silence is our real nature. Silence is our goal. And no amount of noise can get us to silence. So it can only be only path to the goal. The goal is silence, and the path is also silence. So it is only by silence that it can be revealed. We can come to know this. So it is the ultimate. It is the ultimate teaching, and there's a parallel to this. Oh well, here there's another thing in Appalapatu, the song on the Appalam, the Papa, the Papadom or whatever it's called, different names in different Indian languages. In Tamil it's called Appalam. Bhagavan wrote this song for his mother because she wanted him to help her make these appalam. So all the ingredients of appalam he uses as a metaphor for this spiritual path. In the first verse he says, Tan Allah, what is not oneself, Ain Kosam Kshetram. This body, Kshetra means this field or body of 5 sheaths. Idil, he talks about how this self-ignorance is there, it grows in this field of the 5 sheaths, and how it's by nana enam jnana vicharam, by that grinding of that jnana-vichara, the self-investigation, who am I, you have to grind it. So in this way he's explaining, he's using the making of the appalam as a metaphor for this spiritual path. And in the last verse he says, Mona mudre ahum mudivilla patrital, that's in the vessel or the cooking pan, the limitless cooking pan, which is Mona or Mona Mudra. That's a sign of Mona. That actually just means Mona. Jnanagniyal kayam. So cooking that appalam by the fire of jnana in the cooking pan, which is Mona. So, I mean, in this way, he's constantly pointing back to the silence is the ultimate thing. It's ultimately only in that frying pan of silence that this ego can be destroyed by the fire of jnana. He expresses things in such beautiful words, in such beautiful ways in his Tamil poetry. And in the second verse of Arunachala, he explains very, very beautifully. Kandavan eben ena karutinil nada. When it's not, there's not even a subject here. When the implication is when the seer looked within the mind to see who is the seer, Kandavan Indrida, Kandavan Indrida Nindradu Kandain. I saw what remained when the seer ceased to exist. Then in the next line he says, Kandanan, I saw, Indrida Karuteraville. Now the thought no thought arises to say I see. How can any thought arise to say I have not seen? That's the first half of the verse. And then he says, Vindidu Vilakidu Virul Uru Bona Vindile Panduni Vilakida Endral. When this is exactly the same idea, but he says in that verse of Ekatma Panchakam, when in ancient times you made this known without saying, who can make it known by saying? Who can Vilakidu means who can make this clear? Who can make it known by saying anything. So no words can reveal it. And then he ends in the final line of the verse, he says, Vindida dunnile vilakida vendre vintala machala ma vilankida nindra. You stand as a hill from ground to sky. You know, that, I mean, the analogy meant about all-pervading hill, only to make your state known without words. So the whole Arunachala is just the embodiment of silence. But why this particular form of all the forms of God? Why this form of God was the one that attracted Bhagavan? Because Arunachala is the embodiment of silence. And Bhagavan is the same Arunachala, so the same silence. So like attracts like. That is, in the manifest world, we saw Bhagavan's great love for Arunachala. That is the outward expression of his love for silence, which is our real nature. So only by loving silence as Bhagavan loved silence, as Bhagavan loved Arunachala, can we know what we really are, because silence is what we really are. So all Bhagavan's teachings, everything ties together, whether it's in Arunachala Stuti Panchakam, whether it's in Ekama Panchakam, whether it's Ulidunaptu, Pradechundir Nanya, or with Apalapatu, all these places, Bhagavan is pointing back to the same thing. And that is silence, and that is what we really are. So silence is not only the highest teaching, it is the only teaching ultimately. Because it's only by silence that it will all be revealed. But in order to learn, in order to, just like the teaching is in silence, the learning also has to be in silence. And that requires us to turn our attention back within. Because only when we turn our attention back within does the root of all noise, namely the ego, subside. And then we can learn what is the real silence. So Bhagavan's silent teaching and his words, they all are intimately interlinked. And his whole life was an expression of that.
I think in silence you also transcend your mind and thoughts. You're above.
Yes. People think silence means, well, I mean, the grossest understanding of silence is keeping quiet, not talking. But that is not what silence Bhagavan talks about. A slightly more subtle understanding of silence is silence of the mind. But that is not the silence Bhagavan is talking about. The silence Bhagavan is talking about is the silence which is beyond the mind. And where there is no mind, that is silence. So long as there's a mind to be silent, that is not the silence Bhagavan is talking about. It is the he doesn't use the word silence there, but Bhagavan expresses very nicely in verse 7 of Uludunapadu, he in the first sentence he says, though the world and the awareness of it rise and subside together, it is only by the awareness that the world shines. The awareness that Bhagavan is referring to there, he uses the Tamil word arivu, which means knowledge or awareness, but that is clearly referring to the mind or ego, because the awareness that rises and subsides is only the ego. So it's only by this, though the world and the ego rise together and subside together, it's only by the world, it's only by the ego that the world shines. In other words, he's constantly, Bhagavan is emphasizing in Unlearning and elsewhere, but the basis of everything is the ego. Because to whom is ignorance, to whom is suffering, to whom are all these problems? It's only to the ego. Then in the next verse he says, that which shines without appearing and disappearing as the base for the appearing and disappearing of world and ego or mind, that is porul. Porul is a Tamil word, means the same as vastu in Sanskrit. That is the vastu. I can't remember exactly how the words go. He also says it's Pundramam akte porul. Pundramam means that is Pundram. Pundram is a Tamil form of the Sanskrit word Purna. So that is the Purna Vastu. That is the reality. That is the real substance, which is the whole. So the reality is that which doesn't appear or disappear, which is always shining. And it's the base for the appearing and disappearing of the mind and world. So that is that porul, that vastu, that is silence. But it never appears or disappears, so it's always silent. But it's a basis from which all this noise arises and into which it subsides. And the root of all this noise is the ego, and the whole world is the expansion of the ego. So all these problems we see in the world, I mean, if we follow the news, there are so many problems in the world, but there have never not been problems in the world. The very nature of the world is problems of one sort or another. The world, there's never been justice in the world. There's never, there are sometimes justice, but the justice is always side by side with the injustice. The pleasures we enjoy in life, they're side by side with suffering. So the world is ever imperfect, and the root of the world is ever imperfect. That is the ego. But within the ego, there is that perfection. That is the I. That is the awareness. The awareness within the ego, that is the reality. It's from that awareness, but this ego awareness that sees the world arises and into which it subsides. That is the real awareness. As Bhagavan clarifies in some of the later verses of Unlearning in 10, 11, 12, 13. He clarifies about that. So silence is the base, the adhara from which everything appears. So the absence of the mind is silence. But even when the mind arises, what is there is actually only silence. All this is only silence. We are just misperceiving it as this world and as ourselves as a separate knower of this world. But if we look within, we'll see everything is only silence. And silence alone exists.
Michael, use that word within.
Yes.
An English word.
Yes.
What did you mean by
that? No words can adequately express this. Bhagavan said ultimately there's no within or without, inside or outside. But so long as we rise as an ego, this difference inside and outside seems to be there. And generally, we think of the material world as being outside, and things that are our thoughts and feelings and everything inside. We generally think like that. But what Bhagavan means by inside, according to Bhagavan, even the thoughts, even the feelings, everything is extraneous to ourselves, is outside ourselves. The only thing that is inside is I. So the chit in the chit jadagranti, that alone is inside. That alone is within. And in Tamil, what Bhagavan often, the term that Bhagavan generally used in Tamil for heart or within is ul. Ul means within, ulam is heart. And the very first verse of Uludunapadu, this word ul, it means within, and it also means being. Ulladu means what is, what exists. So in the very first verse, the first Mangalam verse of Uludunapadu, that's the first benedictory verse of Uludunapadu, Bhagavan, almost the whole verse is formed out of this root, root ul. Ulla dalla dulla una bulla do ulla porul ulla lara ulla te ulla tal ulla menum ulla porul ulla leban ulla te ulla padi ulla de ullal una. He's using this word in so many ways, but it has in ulladu it means what is. Ulla unavu is the awareness that is, or the existing awareness. Ulla do means does it exist. Ulla porul means the existing substance. Ulla lara, ullal, there's another verb which is, instead of ulla, ullu is to think, or to meditate, or to investigate. So ulla lara means without thought. Ulla te, in the heart. Ulla dal, since it exists. Ullam enam, ullam is heart, is a word that means heart. It also, Murugan pointed out, it also has a different, another meaning. Ullam in, the verb ul, meaning to be, is a tenseless verb. So it has only one tense. I mean, it doesn't have past or future. It's only the present tense. We can say, oh, it's a tenseless verb. But ullain means I am. Ullom means we are. But in literary Tamil, sometimes ullom becomes ullam, which means we are. So another meaning of this word ullam, besides meaning heart, it also means I am. Or literally it means we are, but we there is used as a collective form of the singular. Because Bhagavan often used the word we when he's referring to either to the ego or to the reality of the ego, our real nature, but he uses we plural, not because it is plural, but because if Bhagavan had said I, he would be excluding us. But when he says we, he's including us. It's an inclusive we. So ullam can mean heart, it can also mean I am. That meaning was pointed out by Murugan. Ullamenum means which is called the heart. Ulla porul, the existing substance. Ullal, again thinking. Evan, who can or how to think of the ullaporul, the reality. Since it exists within the heart beyond thought, who can think of it? Ullate, in the heart, ullapadi, as it is. Ullade, just being, or being only. Ullal una, that is thinking, that is meditating. So the only way, Bhagavan says in this verse, the only way to meditate on what is to be it as it is, to be in the heart as it is. So to be in it as it is meditating on it.
So is that the first verse of the 40?
Yes, but that's not the first verse of the text. There are two Mangalam verses. That means like benedictory verses at the beginning. So it's the first of them. So here actually he doesn't. He's not actually using ul here in the sense of within, except as heart or... but I mean, ul, often Bhagavan uses this word ul. I mean, so many other verses of Uludinapti, he's talking about turning within to I mean, it's a word he uses often. So what Bhagavan means by within is turning back to ourselves, basically. Everything else, anything that appears and disappears is external to ourselves. So the only thing that doesn't appear or disappear is ourself. So turning our attention back to ourselves, that is turning within. Attending to anything other than ourselves, any thought, any feeling, is, according to Bhagavan, that's bahyamukam. And Bhagavan used another term. In Sanskrit, there are two words. Antamukam means facing inwards. Bahyamukam means facing outwards. In Tamil, a word that Bhagavan often used is ahamukam, because in Tamil, the word aham has two meanings. It can either be the Sanskrit pronoun I. It is also a word of Tamil origin that means heart or within or home. So ahamukam means both facing within and facing towards I. That's a word that Bhagavan often used. For example, I mean, he uses it in Nanyar in one place, he uses the term ahamukam. He also uses it in Arunachala, the third verse of Arunachala Pancharatnam, ahamukama. That means facing inwards or facing towards I. Ahamukama anda amalamati tannal. By that pure mind which is facing inwards, aham idutan engu. Where did this I arise? Engu erum endru einde. Investigating where this I arises with the mind, the pure mind which is facing inwards or facing Iwards, facing towards I. Ahavuruve Nangarindu, knowing the ahavuru, the real nature of what is within, or the real nature of I. Nangarindu, munne nadi pole, like a river in the ocean. They will merge in you, Arunachala, like a river in the ocean. So that, it's very difficult to fully appreciate Bhagavan's teachings without appreciating the Tamil, because he uses words in such a nice way, with so many shades and levels of meaning. That's why we can never fully comprehend Bhagavan's words. The more we follow his path, the clearer the meaning of his words will become. But ultimately, before we can fully comprehend the depth and the meaning and all the implications in what Bhagavan has taught us in words, we will lose ourselves. And then there'll be no one to understand it. What remains is silence, which is the true import of Bhagavan's teachings. So no one can say, oh, I've studied Bhagavan's teachings, I've understood them perfectly. None of us have understood. There's always room for greater... it's not that we're going to learn anything more. We're not going to gain any more information by studying Bhagavan's teachings again and again. What we gain is greater and greater clarity. And that clarity is what gives us the conviction and what gives us the love to turn within. And that clarity comes from the practice. So Bhagavan's teachings in words and his teachings in silence are constantly going on hand in hand. They're inseparable.
It sounds like there's an awful lot lost in translation.
No, there is an awful lot lost, but you can find it all. If you want to find it all, just look within, because that's the source of it all. It is an advantage when we are following this path, to know Tamil, but it's not essential, because it's not. I mean, Bhagavan's words are Bhagavan used words in a very, very subtle way. And he conveys a lot of meaning in very, very simple words. But the meaning we can translate into English, or at least the bare meaning, and that is sufficient, because if we understand the bare meaning, what Bhagavan is pointing it to, the whole of Bhagavan's teachings can be summarized by see yourself, look at yourself, investigate who you are. That's all there is to it. That's all the practice. I mean, it's expressed by Bhagavan in so many ways in Tamil, but ultimately it all comes down to see yourself. So if we follow that, if we try to see ourselves, it will all become perfectly clear, whether we know Tamil or not. It doesn't. It's a bonus to know Tamil. But if Bhagavan wanted us to know Tamil, he would give us that knowledge. If he hasn't given us that knowledge, we didn't come here to learn Tamil. We came here to learn what we are. So it's not. Nothing is essential. The only thing that is essential is turning within to see what we actually are.
He quite often talks about the heart.
Heart.
That's a very good point, within and without.
Yes.
Where is the heart?
You are the heart.
Yeah, who am I?
I can't answer that for you. You have to. You are not that. You are not this or that. Bhagavan expressed the ultimate experience. Bhagavan didn't express the ultimate experience as I am this or I am that. Bhagavan expressed the ultimate experience as nan, aham, aham, I am I. Because can you be anything other than yourself?
No.
So the only true identification can be I am I. So long as we identify ourselves as I am this or I am that, even to say, even I am Brahman, when the Vedas say I am Brahman, they are pointing out there's no Brahman other than I. If you want to know Brahman, you have to look at I. But if we say I am Brahman, then you've got two things. You've got an I and you've got a Brahman. That is ignorance. So to experience I am Brahman, the real experience of I am Brahman is I am I. Just the pure self-awareness. It's because we look for Brahman, because we look for God, because we look for reality outside ourselves, the Vedas say, you are that. I am Brahman. They say that to turn our attention back towards ourselves. Not for us to think, I am Brahman, or I am that, or I am this, or...
So the heart can be the source.
Yeah, heart means the center, the core. And you, what is the center of all your experience? What is the center?
My center is what I see, I am.
No, what you see is all the surroundings. You are the center of all these surroundings. Don't you? What is your experience? Are you there or here? We all say I'm here. Our experience is always I'm here. What is it that makes us feel? What is it that makes? Now, what is the time? It's just after 3 o'clock or something, if that clock is correct. It's just after 3 o'clock on a certain day. Why do we feel this particular moment in time is now? Why do we feel the place where we are sitting is here? What is it that makes this point in time seem to be the present time, and this point in space seem to be the present place? What is present here? It is I. Because I am present here, this moment is present, and this place is present. So the center of everything is I. Yes. Nothing else. So you are the heart. Yeah. So Bhagavan often said, heart means nothing but oneself. It's our real, what we actually are, that is the heart.
So we're really talking about the source of.
Well, yes, but all that appears, yes, all that appears and disappears must have a source. What is that source? You are the source. So even to talk of source, we're removing it from ourselves. So rather than talking about, that's why Bhagavan, what is Bhagavan's teaching? Nan-ya. That nan is the important thing. Bhagavan's whole teaching is centered around I. Because I is the first person pronoun, but always refers to ourself. So what the word I refers to is the heart. That is you. That is what we actually are. So we are never away from that.
I think the confusion arises because when you are referring to I, you are referring to the body-mind mechanism.
Yes.
I as the Dehati Buddhi.
That is...
Dehātma Buddhi.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what causing confusion.
That is...
I, you mean Atman. Then there is no problem because Atman and Brahman are
What is Atman?
Atman is Brahman.
No.
Atman is the essence of you.
Atman is not Brahman, you are Atman.
I am Brahman, Atman is
Yeah, I know. But the thing is, as you said very correctly at first, the whole confusion arises because of this identification, I am a body. That is what Bhagavan said. That identification, I am a body, that is the ego. That is the root of all confusion. In order to get rid of that confusion, that is what we need to investigate.
We should realize that I am talking about I, that is not the real I.
We don't have to realize anything. We just have to see. I mean, the trouble is words, it's very difficult to get beyond words, but what Bhagavan is pointing to is beyond words. What he's pointing to is you are that. All you need to do is to see yourself. Okay, call it realization or whatever. But realization implies there's something new to know. According to Bhagavan, there's nothing new to know. What Bhagavan often used to say, in this path, it's not a matter of learning, it's a matter of unlearning. There's nothing new to know. The problem is we have taken on superfluous knowledge. The root of all superfluous knowledge is the knowledge I am this body, the ego. And then we know all these other things. Getting rid of all this false knowledge, what remains is the real knowledge. And the root of all the false knowledge is the ego. So it's only by getting rid of the ego. And what is the ego? The ego is a false awareness of ourselves. Instead of being aware of ourselves as I am I, we're aware of ourselves as I am this body, I am Michael, I am Guru Das. So we don't need to, there's nothing, Atma-vichara, Bhagavan often said, Atma-vichara is not a new knowledge to be attained. If it was something new to be attained, it would come and it would go. But Atma-vichara is here and now. There is not a single person who is lacking in Atma-vichara. Atma-vichara simply means self-awareness. Who is not aware of themselves? The Atma-vichara is already there. The problem is we've mixed up other awareness of other things with this Atma-vichara, and we now feel, I am this body. That is a false self-awareness. But at the core of that false self-awareness, at the heart of that false self-awareness, is the real self-awareness, which is I am I, the pure, mere I am. That is the reality. That is Brahman. That is you. Tattvamasi.
I think the Panchakosha theory explains it very clearly. 5 koshas.
Yes.
The outermost kosha, Annamaya
Yes.
Buddhi, Annamaya
Yes.
Sharira. What we think of that,
Yes.
but not the essence of the
Yes.
core
But-
of the
but-
Atma.
yes.
It's surrounded by
Yes.
the 5.
Yes, but Bhagavan sometimes said, people think of, because it's a problem with language. When we talk of 5 sheaths, we think of one sheath inside another. Bhagavan said, people think of the 5 sheaths as like an onion. But if you remove, Bhagavan said you can't remove one without all these 5 I think in the 5th verse of Yes, on the 5th verse of Ullanaptu, Bhagavan says, Uru Panchakosa Uru. The body is a form of 5 sheaths. Therefore, all the 5 are included in the term body. We never experience one of the sheaths without the other ones. Nobody ever experiences a dead body as I. It's always a living body that we experience as I. So that's the Annamaya Kosha and the Pranamaya Kosha. The physical form, the physical structure, and the life, we always experience them together. We can't distinguish the life from the body, now in our present experience. And in this body, we always experience a mind, and we experience an intellect. And the most fundamental of all the sheaths is the irul, the darkness, that darkness of self-ignorance, the darkness in which all the vasanas are there. But none of these sheaths are ourself. The ego rises by taking these 5 sheaths as itself. The ego is not any of these 5 sheaths. It's that which takes these 5 sheaths as itself. But the ego is not the reality. Because the ego rises, the ego doesn't exist except when it takes these 5 sheaths as I. Bhagavan says, Urupatriyundam, that it, grasping form, it comes into existence. That's obviously impossible. How can a non-existent thing grasp form? But I mean, this is Maya. This is Maya. Maya means what is not. So by this wonderful power of Maya, the non-existent ego rises, projects all these forms, grasps one of these forms as itself, and then holding on to this form, Urupatriyundam, but grasping form, it comes into existence. Urupatrinikam, grasping form, it stands. Urupatri undu mika ongam, grasping and feeding on forms, it flourishes. It flourishes abundantly. Uruvittu urupatram, leaving one form, it grasps another form. Tedinal otum pedicum, if it seeks itself, if it looks for itself, it disappears. Uruvatrapeya hande, this formless phantom ego. This is the whole problem, is because we've risen as this ego. But the simple solution, Bhagavan he's the perfect doctor. He's not just, Bhagavan isn't interested in the symptoms. He's gone to the root of the symptoms. All the symptoms, the root of them is the ego. Who is the one who suffers? Who is the one who is ignorant? It is the ego. So the root of the whole disease is the ego, the one who is suffering from the disease. And the solution to that, why it seems to we seem to be this ego, because we grasp forms. How does this formless ego grasp forms? It grasps only in its awareness. It's by being aware of things other than ourselves, but we seem to be this ego. We don't seem to be an ego in sleep, do we? It's only in waking dream that we seem to be this ego. We seem to be this ego because we're looking at other things. So long as we're looking at other things, we seem to be this ego. But if we look back to see who am I, this ego who has risen to grasp this body as I, we don't find anything. It subsides and disappears because it's a formless phantom. If you're walking in a forest at night, a little bit of moonlight is filtering through the trees. You see ghosts everywhere. But if you look very closely, none of those ghosts are real. It's just the light flickering out. So this ego has no reality of itself. It's only when we don't look at it, when we look at other things, we seem to be this ego. If we look at this ego, it disappears. And what there remains then? What was always there. And what is always there, and what alone actually exists. That is Brahman, that is Atma-swarupam, that is, we can call it by so many names, that is Mona, that is silence, that is Vastu, that is Poru. We can give it so many names, but what it actually is ourself. We are that. Tattvamasi. It's so simple. But so long as we look outwards, it's very difficult for us to be fully convinced of this, to get full clarity. The only way to get that clarity, which is ever shining in our heart, silently shining in our heart, is to turn within, to turn our attention back towards ourselves, to face ourselves. So Bhagavan's path is the simplest of all spiritual paths. It's the simplest of all philosophies. Bhagavan is, you cannot have a philosophy simpler than Bhagavan's philosophy.
I'm very good at looking outwards. It just happens naturally. How to turn back? How to do that?
We say it happens naturally. Why does it seem natural to look outside? Because we now experience ourselves as the ego. The very nature of the ego, it comes into existence by grasping form. That means it comes into existence by looking outwards. It's the very nature of the ego to look outwards. The ego will dissolve only when it looks within. But is the ego ready to look with? Is the ego ready to dissolve? Until we're ready, in the next verse of Ulunapatu, verse 26, Bhagavan says, Ahandayundayam anatamundaham. If the ego comes into existence, everything comes into existence. Ahandayindrail indruanatam. If the ego doesn't exist, everything doesn't exist. Ahandayayabmam. The ego itself is everything. Adalal yaduidu and anadale overdal yavam and or. I mean, therefore, investigating what this is giving up everything. Until we are ready to give up everything, this will seem difficult. It will seem unnatural to us to look within, because we're not ready to let go. To fall, if you're standing on the edge of a cliff, to fall over the cliff is very easy, but so long as you're clinging onto a pole on there, you're not going to fall over the cliff. You have to be ready to let go. We're not yet ready to let go, are we? That is the problem. That is why we are not ready to let go, because we haven't understood Bhagavan's teachings. In spite of all our reading, all our talking about it and everything, we've understood superficially, at a surface level of our mind, but we don't have a deep conviction. If we had a deep conviction, we would happily let go.
So how to understand it, the teaching more clearly?
By looking within. By trying little, even if to let go completely, we have to turn 180 degrees. We're now facing outwards, we have to turn 180 degrees. When we turn 180 degrees, we've let go of everything. We're not yet able to let go. We're unwilling to let go. But we're willing to let go a little. So let us just turn 5 degrees, 10 degrees, 20 degrees, as much as we can. Slowly, slowly, slowly. Gradually, we have to cultivate this habit of looking within, turning our attention back towards ourselves. Our attention will keep on turning out again. That is natural. And that's why Bhagavan described in Nanya, in Who Am I, what does it matter how many thoughts arise? What is the arising of a thought? The turning of our attention outwards. When we turn our attention outwards, phenomena appear. All these phenomena are thoughts. So being aware of anything other than ourselves is what Bhagavan calls the rising of a thought. So what does it matter however many phenomena appear, however much we're aware of other things? When each thought arises, all we have to do is to investigate, to whom does this arise? And we turn our attention a little back towards ourselves. And then again we slowly, this process of turning our attention back towards ourselves.
It's written somewhere that I am that I am summarizes the whole of the scriptures.
Yes, Bhagavan said that.
Be still summarizes the method.
Yes, yeah.
Would you say that's right?
Well, I don't ask me. Bhagavan said that. But
Translation correct?
it's more or less correct. I mean, Bhagavan studied in when he was in Madurai and later in Dindigul. I think in Madurai he studied in American Mission High School. Anyway, most of the schools in India in those days were run by missionaries. So most Indian children would learn something about the Bible. So Bhagavan learnt a little bit about the Bible. So he knew somewhere a little bit of the Psalms, he knew a little bit of Exodus. So later, when everything became clear to him, he understood, oh, this is what that meant. Yeah. So Bhagavan said, yes, it's all there in the Bible. Bhagavan doesn't recommend the Bible because there's a lot of nonsense in the Bible. But Bhagavan knew the few gems that were there in the Bible and he pointed them out.
Is it possible to be aware of the outside simultaneously being aware of the inside? So when Ramana was talking to people that came to visit him, was he in that state of Satchitananda while he was talking?
Okay.
Go back and come into
Okay, who was the one who was talking? Who was the one who was answering the questions? We see this body and we say this is Bhagavan. But Bhagavan's first teaching is what? I am not this body. Because we see ourselves as a body, we see Bhagavan as a body. Bhagavan's experience is completely different. In Bhagavan's view, I alone am. That's his experience. For Bhagavan, there's no body, no world. But
each of our experience is unique to ourselves, and there is no shared experience then possible. So this
when you alone exist, who can you share anything with? According to Bhagavan, you alone exist. All this is your dream. So long as the dream seems real, we have our friends, we have our family, we have our loved ones, and in a dream, when you experience hunger in your dream, you eat dream food and your hunger is satisfied. So long as we're in this dream, we have to act as if this dream is real. Because who is acting in the dream? It's the body and mind which are part of the dream. The person you take yourself to be in this dream is as much a part of your mental projection as all the other people you see. So if this person that you take yourself to be, if I ask you, are you real? You'll say, yes, I'm real. You certainly feel you are real as the person that you seem to be. So if you're real as this person, all these other people are real. So long as our attention is outward, we have to act in the world as if the world is real. And it is for all intents and purposes, it is real. We can't just go and tell someone, oh, you're my mental projection, I don't care what you think. They'll give us a beating, won't they? So long as this body is I, the world is real. For all intents and purposes. Because this body is part of the world. What is real is actually only I. But when we mistake this body to be I, we're mistaking the body to be real. And the body can't be real without the whole world being real. So in effect, it's all real. Though it's all a dream, while you're dreaming, the dream is real. Or it seems to be real. It's not actually real, but it seems to be real. So the only way out of it is, who is the dreamer? Who is seeing this dream? While we're dreaming, there are so many other people seeing the dream with us, aren't there? But actually we only are aware of one person who is actually seeing or not even a person, but it's not the person who is aware of the world, it's the ego that is aware of the world, it's the ego that is aware of itself as the person, and therefore feels, yes, I, Michael, am seeing the world. But Michael is a part of the phenomena that I am seeing. So who am I? Who is this I who says I am Michael? Who is this I who says there's a world out there? Who is this I who says there are so many people? In whose view does all this seem real? In whose view is Bhagavan this body that lived for 54 years and gave all these teachings?
Then there's nothing that I can take as with any degree of certainty. All I can
No, there's one thing that is certain. I am. I am is absolutely certain. What is not certain I feel I'm Michael. That seems very certain to me, but that is not actually certain. Because how can I be Michael? If I am Michael, I must always be aware of, now Michael is the name of this body. But when I'm dreaming, it's not this body I experience as I, it's some other body. So, since I then experience myself without experiencing this body cannot be what I am. And since I now experience myself without experiencing myself with that dream body cannot be what I am. And in sleep, I'm aware of myself without any body at all. So all these are phenomena which come and go. None of them can be ourselves. Because we are the basis, we are the substratum, the ground on which all these things appear. We're like the cinema screen.
The situation that I'm in now is just my own projection.
Yes, according to Bhagavan. It may be difficult for us to accept it, but what evidence do we have that any of these things exist independent of our perception of them? While we're dreaming, the dream seems perfectly real. When we wake up, we recognize it's a dream. Why do we recognize it's a dream when we wake up? And why does it seem real so long as we're dreaming? Because while we're dreaming, the dream body seems to be I. Because I is real, the dream body seems to be real, hence the whole dream world seems to be real. As soon as we wake up, that's as soon as we go from one dream to another dream, our identification with that dream body is broken. Then once we recognize, oh, it was just a mental projection. We have no doubt when we wake up from a dream. We don't think we travel to, there are some people who believe it, but normally we don't believe, but we traveled to some other world and we know it was just our own imagination. But so long as we were experiencing it, it seems so real. According to Bhagavan, this is also a dream. This also seems real so long as we're experiencing it. And when we say we, how many actually are experiencing it? Is there anyone here who is aware of more than one person who is aware of the world? We assume, because we take ourselves to be this person, we take the ego takes itself to be a person, so it takes every person to be an ego. But actually there's only one ego. There's only one who is seeing, in a dream only one person is seeing it.
It is. All I know is the experience that I can experience through this body. I cannot experience anything outside of that.
Yes.
So from that.
Well, no, you are. Every night when you dream, you're experiencing something outside that body. That body doesn't. You're not at all aware of this body.
You're seeing the experience happening, whether it's this life or what's happening in the dream. The thing that's aware of that is only. That's the only thing. But you can make that argument just as well, like that from your perspective. You are also having an experience, and there is this shared thing.
Yes.
Am I your projection or you mine? Or where exactly is the center?
You alone can answer that. I can't answer that because I'm your projection. If your projection tells me you are my projection, if someone tells you if someone comes to you in your dream and says you're just my mental projection, what does that mean? That person who says that is your mental projection. So this is what is called in Indian philosophy. This is called ekajiva vada, the contention that there's only one jiva, which most people are not ready to accept. But Bhagavan said this is the truth. And once when Bhagavan was explaining about this, probably more than once, but often this came up, someone asked Bhagavan, if there's only one jiva, among all the people sitting here in the hall, who is the one jiva? Bhagavan said, you are that. And someone else said, Bhagavan, what about me? Bhagavan said, you are that.
To get the answer, the only way to get it is this
term within. Everything will be solved when we turn within. So long as we're looking outwards, the ego is a confusion. We're confusing pure self-awareness with this body. What great confusion can there be? So the ego who is seeing all this world is itself a confusion. So what it sees is only confusion. So if we want to be free of confusion, if we want clarity, we have to look within. So long as we're looking outwards, we are confused.
The thing is, what I was going to say was, the way I see it, I'm new to this.
Right.
I was just guided to come back.
Yes.
My belief was that I am spirit and I live in the world in a spirit medium that, the body is a manifestation of. But Ramana is sitting here now. Has told me, says, you're not spirit, you're God. No, I didn't expect this. It says to me, you're not spirit, you're God. Spirit is this medium. Air we breathe is spirit. But it says, I know. I did not expect that. He says, my higher self sent me here to clear this up. That I keep calling myself spirit. No, you're not spirit. You're God. Spirit is this. Okay?
Yeah.
So, we're all God.
Yes.
That's it.
If we were anything other than God, God would be limited. Once a Christian missionary said to Bhagavan, isn't it blasphemy?
I'm sorry. I didn't expect this. I just came in because I was guided to come and please just tell me that I'm not what I was.
Yes. Once a Christian missionary said to Bhagavan, isn't it blasphemy to say I am God? Bhagavan said, isn't it blasphemy? Bhagavan replied, isn't it blasphemy to say I'm separate from God? Because if we say we're separate from God, we're limiting God.
For a long time when I heard that,
Yes.
I almost felt that how can, who has the right to say I am God?
Yes.
I've always thought that this arrogance.
Yes.
And I said, you are God.
Yes. God alone exists, so we cannot be other than Him.
Sorry. That's it. I was going to say, I had this big speech I was going to say. It's been cut short.
Yes.
Hi, Michael. Thank you for your explanations. I was trying to make what we were saying earlier on in the first half experiential for me. So I was trying to exclude those terms, Brahman, Atman, Self, all that, because there's lots of labels and intellectual aspects to those words. So in trying to boil down everything to the bare experience, I can say there is one part which is the name, my name, what I do, the body, or the life story. That's one aspect, which is not that interesting. And then there is this other aspect, which I'm assuming is what we're referring to, this awareness, this, I'm conscious of other people, I'm aware of what you're saying and the ideas you put in. So that awareness really seems to change. Whenever I put my mind to it, or turn attention, it's always a constant, whatever the content is. That is always seems to be a constant. Now, is that constant awareness is what we're referring to as that's what I am?
Yes, our real nature is awareness, but our real what no. No, what we actually are is pure awareness. For pure awareness, there is no content and no objects. In sleep, what we experience is pure awareness. We're not aware of anything, but we are aware, because awareness is our real nature. In waking and dream, we rise as this ego. The ego is the root of the mind. The mind is the awareness that has content. So for the ego, there is content of awareness. The ego is aware of things. That which is aware of things, in Tamil Bhagavan used a word for it, which is suttarivu. Suttarivu literally means the pointing awareness. What he means by that is awareness of anything other than ourselves. That is not the real awareness. The real awareness is awareness that isn't aware of anything other than itself. That is what we really are. That is the base. We can understand this in a very simple way. In order to be aware of something, we need to be aware. But in order to be aware, we don't need to be aware of anything. So the basic awareness is the awareness that is just aware. That is the awareness that we actually are. When we are aware of something, we have risen as the ego. Because in order to be aware of something, there's separation then. There's subject and there's object. We who are aware of a subject, what we're aware of is the object. Whether that object is a material, seemingly material object like a chair or a floor or lights or whatever, or a mental object, I mean, what is obviously a mental object, like a thought or a feeling or something. They're all objects. So any object, awareness of any object is the ego. That which is aware of any object is the ego. This is not the permanent awareness because it comes in waking and dream and it disappears in sleep. So what we are interested in is what is permanent. So what is permanent is there in all the three states. The awareness that exists in sleep is here even now. That is the basic substratum. So the sleep is a state of pure awareness. In waking and dream, this ego rises and is aware of things. It projects things in its own awareness. So, because that comes, it goes. It's not permanent, and therefore it's not real. What is real has to be constantly there. So our real nature is pure awareness. Awareness of things is the ego. That is the root of all the problems. But if we weren't aware of, in sleep we don't have any problems, do we? We don't have any, there's no wars, there's no suffering, there's no problems to solve, there's no hunger, there's no birth, there's no death. Sleep is nothing wrong with sleep. Only problem with sleep is we come out of it. But that is not a problem in sleep. Because what comes out of sleep is the ego, which wasn't there in sleep. So the problems are all for the ego. So this is Bhagavan's diagnosis. The whole problem is the ego. or whatever other problem you make. You can mention any other problem. You can describe a problem as desire, you can describe it as suffering, you can describe it as ignorance, you can describe it as anything. But who is ignorant? Who is suffering? Who has desire? It's all the ego. So the ego is the root of everything. So this is Bhagavan's diagnosis. The ego is the problem. Then how to get rid of this ego? Bhagavan says the ego rises by being aware of things other than itself. Those things other than itself don't exist independent of it. So when it rises, it projects things and experiences itself the separation between subject and object. So long as we are looking at objects, so long as we are attending to anything other than ourselves, we are sustaining the ego. We are able to keep this up only for a certain amount of time because it requires energy. Our attention has to go out, we have to project things, so it requires energy. We get tired very quickly. After 16 hours or so, we've had enough. We subside back into sleep. Sleep is even from the point of view of the mind in the waking state, or the ego in the waking state, sleep is a strange phenomenon. Because if you have a machine like a car, if you switch the car off and switch it on again, it hasn't gained any energy, has it? You have to put energy in, you have to put fuel in. But this ego is not like that. The ego, there's no food that we can give the ego. The only way for the ego to recuperate its energy is to subside. When it subsides where? Back into its source, that is in ourself, which is the source of all power. So by staying for some time in sleep, it's like recharging the battery. And it recharges the battery, it comes back with full vigor, it starts projecting things again, until it gets tired, it subsides. So the mere subsidence of the ego is not the solution. Because when the ego subsides, when it dissolves, as it does in sleep, it comes back again. So what is the solution? How do we get rid of this ego? For that, Bhagavan has given us a very simple solution. So the ego seems to exist so long as it's attending to anything other than itself. And whenever it's aware of other things, it's always aware of itself as a body. So it has it's only because of this confused awareness it has of itself, because it's aware of itself as one of the phenomena it's aware of, this confusion is the nature of the ego, and it sustains itself by being aware of other things. If the ego turns its attention back to itself to see who am I, what am I, firstly, it's letting go of other things, which are the food. So it's cutting off its source of nourishment, and it is looking at itself. It seems to exist only so long as it's looking at other things. Because only so long as we're looking at other things are we able to experience ourselves as a body. When we look at ourselves alone, if we really turn our attention 180 degrees, then we are 100% excluding everything else from our awareness, then where is the ego?
Yes, what I've noticed when I do that, then even the body loses its...
Yeah, everything begins to dissolve, because the root of everything is the ego. When we attend to the ego, it begins to dissolve. So to the extent we very keenly observe ourselves, look at ourselves, attend to ourselves, to that extent the ego is dissolved, and along with it all the phenomena are dissolved.
So just I'm always concerned with my brain making a concept of everything.
Right.
So experientially I think what you're saying is that as my attention is focused on itself,
yes,
awareness, so I'm focusing on the screen as opposed to the
pictures
on the screen.
Yep.
Then the attachment to all the objects, including my body and my thoughts,
yes,
seem to become at a distance, as it were.
Yeah.
It's not such an intimate relationship.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, experientially, does that mean it's just like an awareness? I'm just sitting in an awareness? Or?
Yes, yes. We're coming closer to the pure, the more we attend to ourselves, the closer we are to the pure awareness that we actually are. And during the waking and dream state, at each moment we have a choice. Either we attend to things other than ourselves, anything, it doesn't matter, or we attend to ourselves. We always have that choice. We always have that freedom. When we attend to other things, we are strengthening our attachment. Because the very awareness of anything other than ourselves is attachment. Sadhuam said very simply in Patha Sri Ramana, attention itself is attachment. So long as we attend to anything other than ourselves, we are feeding our attachment to those things. But we have a choice. At any moment, we can either attend to phenomena or we can attend to ourselves. If we attend to a phenomena, we are sustaining the attachment. Every time we choose to turn away from the phenomena back to ourselves, we are slowly weakening that attachment we have to phenomena, and we are strengthening the attachment we have towards ourselves. The attachment to phenomena are what are called Vishaya vasanas. Vishaya means phenomena or things other than ourselves. So the Vishaya vasanas, when we attend to other things, we're feeding our Vishaya vasana. When we attend to ourselves, what are we? We are Sat. We are just being. So we increase our Sat vasana. So to the extent that we attend to ourselves, we're strengthening the Sat vasana, weakening the Vishaya vasanas. What are called Vishaya vasanas, we can describe it in another term. That is desire. Sat vasana is love. That is the love to be as we actually are, the Swapna Bhakti. So to the extent we give up attending to other things, that is vairagya. To the extent we attend to ourselves, that is bhakti. And it's by this bhakti and vairagya but we will eventually win this war. Because the more we turn within, the more our satvasana, our love just to be, is strengthening, and our desire, our attachments for other things are weakening. That's why this is a process where none of us are able to succeed at the first attempt. We can say, oh, Bhagavan succeeded at first attempt, but even Bhagavan's indicated, he said, if someone succeeds without effort in this lifetime, it's because all the required effort has already been put in earlier. Bhagavan said, no one succeeds in this path without perseverance. Because, as someone was saying earlier, the very nature of the mind, the very nature of the ego is to go outwards. It's natural to us to attend to other things. Natural to us as the ego, not as we really are. It's not our real nature to attend to other things, but when we take ourselves to be the ego, it seems perfectly natural to attend to things other than ourselves. So we are turning the flow of the mind. Its habitual flow is downhill. We're trying to get it to turn uphill again. That's how it seems, but it's not actually uphill. But really, the subsidence of... We think it's an effort to turn within. Bhagavan once said, and he said this as a joke, but it also has a very deep meaning. He said, people say that in spite of any amount of effort, it's impossible to stop thoughts. But I find quite the opposite. In spite of any amount of effort, I'm not able to think a thought. Bhagavan said it as a joke, but it has a deep meaning. Actually, it requires effort to attend to things other than ourselves. That is why we need to fall asleep every night. Because in order to attend to things other than ourselves, we have to project it, and we have to direct our attention out, away from ourselves. Whereas when we turn our attention back towards ourselves, our attention is resting in its source, because we are the source of our attention. By attending to ourselves, we're resting in our source.
Can I just add something?
Yes.
A query. When I'm on good days, when I'm very focused on that inner consciousness, on that self, the issues tend to sort of happen quite effortlessly.
Yeah.
I don't have to give them attention.
Yeah.
So if I get anxious or worried, then
Yeah.
the attention goes out to those objects. So on good days, I find I can just sit in the bed and things seem to somehow, there doesn't seem to be the need for that much attention.
Yes.
So my question is, to do with the quality of love. So as one is sitting more in this being,
Yes.
I've often heard and read that the quality of this is love. But I'm not sure what that means experientially. What are we talking about? So I'm sitting in this, tending to the attention as well, sitting in the self, just focusing, putting the attention into it. Things are just happening, how it goes, I'm not too bothered about it.
Yeah.
Now where does this quality of love?
Love is our real nature. We are Satchitananda, or it's also expressed as Asti Bhati Priyam. Asti means being, Bhati means shining, that's for awareness. Priyam is for love. What do we love? We love Ananda, we love happiness. So they're inseparable, happiness and love. So that is our real nature. We are love. But pure love is, when we love something, we are dividing the love. Because we can never not love ourselves. So if I love to have £1 million, say, I'm dividing my love between myself and that £1 million. That is not pure love. That is desire. Desire is nothing but a distortion of love. Love is our real nature. Desire is the nature of the ego. Desire or attachment, whatever we call it. Yes, it's always for something other than oneself. So pure love is only self-love, love for oneself. And since what we actually are alone exists, pure love, by loving ourselves, we are loving everything. That is why everyone experienced Bhagavan as so loving. Why animals came to Bhagavan so freely. Why everyone felt so comfortable in Bhagavan's presence. Because everyone felt, Bhagavan loves me. But actually Bhagavan didn't love any of us. He loved only himself. But because in his view there was nothing other than himself, we are all himself. In his view we are not other than himself. So in loving himself he's loving all of us. So Bhagavan's love was a universal love. He didn't distinguish between whether it's an ant or a snake or a scorpion or a human being or a rich person or a poor person, a Maharaja or a labourer, a Brahmin or a Sudra. For Bhagavan, it's all the same because it's all himself. He sees no differences. So that is the real meaning of love thy neighbour as thyself. How can you love your neighbour as yourself so long as you see your neighbour as other than yourself? So Bhagavan exemplified what is truly loving one's neighbour as oneself. You have to see everything as yourself. In other words, you have to see yourself alone. When you see you alone exist, there's nothing other than you to, and then your love is for all. Because what is all? All is only that one. We ourselves are everything. And
could I push you a bit more?
Yes.
What is this quality we're talking about? So,
the quality we're talking about, if you're asking about love, you are that. If you want an answer, don't ask me, I can't tell you. You have to look in yourself and see what you are. Only when we know what we actually are, we know what love is. We know what silence is. We know what grace is. We know what Bhagavan is. None of us have a clue what Bhagavan is until we see what we actually are.
it's the same.
Yeah. Call it Bhagavan, call it God, call it grace, call it Mona, call it... well, it doesn't matter the name we give it. You are that. And in order to know that, you have to know yourself. That's why Bhagavan's teaching is all about seeing ourselves. As you were saying, if we are God, how to know God? We have to know ourselves. We have to look at ourselves. Who am I? That is the only way to know God directly. God is not, so long as we experience ourselves as a person, God is an idea. But if God is the infinite whole, we cannot be other than him. So it's only by knowing ourselves that we can know God. By knowing what we actually are, we know what God actually is.
We are the expression of God.
We are not the expression of God. We are not the... but even to say we are an expression of God, and the expression of God is something other than God. We are God himself. We are that. So we have to see what we are. Then there's no expression.
Are we not the expression of love?
We can say that. As a person we are the expression of love. But are we this person? Now we seem to be a person. You seem to be one person, I seem to be another person. But this person we seem to be now appears and disappears. Are you aware of, now you experience yourself as a person. Do you experience yourself as a person when you're asleep? But you're still there, aren't you? So what remains in sleep, that is God. That is what we really are. It's only when we look away from God that we see all this. So we have to look back within to see God. Who is ourself?
Can you say that again, please? What really is the sleep is God? Did I understand?
What we experience in sleep is God. There's no separation in sleep, is there? That state of non-separation, that is the state of God. The kingdom of God is within you. And when Jesus said the kingdom of God is within you, he didn't just say the kingdom of God is within you. He said, lo, behold. That's because when the Bible was first translated, that was archaic English. What does lo? Lo means look. Behold means see. So what Jesus said is, look, see, the kingdom of God is within you. Where do we have to look? We have to look within. Simple.
How did you know? I had confusion about lo and behold.
Yeah. Lo means look, behold means see. Look, see. The kingdom of God is within you.
But in practice we don't go around saying I'm God, because we have to work in whichever field we are.
Yeah, and so long as
Experience, but not.
so long as we experience ourselves as a body, to say I am God is meaningless. We have to experience ourselves as God. That means we have to experience what we actually are. So it's not... saying I am God is a lie, because the one who says it is the ego. The ego has to turn its attention back to see what it is, dissolving God, then we are God. Well, then God alone is.
Michael, I think you, when you were explaining to, I can't remember your name, that people felt happy in God's presence because they felt totally loved by him. It wasn't that he was individually loving them, it was simply that he is love. He is love, and that everything is comprised in his love.
Yeah.
But that includes everything, not just people. It's the whole of creation, isn't it? Or what we see as creation.
We see it as creation. In Bhagavan's view, it was only himself.
It includes everything.
Yes.
Without exception.
Yes.
That's what I was trying to say. Yeah. Okay.
But in essence, what you're saying is obviously non-duality.
Yes.
Teaching is a non-duality. But when you refer to us being ourselves, our real selves, when we're asleep,
yes.
The difference, I presume, between us and between Sri Ramana is he was conscious all the time of that experience, whereas when I go to sleep, I can never, in deep sleep, I never remember anything.
So there's a difference between you and Bhagavan, is there?
Yeah, because he's...
In whose view is there this difference? It is, when we're in sleep, we don't have any complaints. It's in the waking, when we rise as this ego, why we...
We're not awakened, that's the point I was trying to make. When we're in deep sleep.
We are perfectly awakened. Bhagavan said deep sleep is a state of pure awareness. Bhagavan said waking is a state of total ignorance. Sleep is a state of pure awareness, total knowledge, perfect knowledge. But now we experience ourselves as this ego. As this ego, we weren't present there in sleep. If we could recall now what we experienced in sleep, the ego would be dissolved. Because what we experienced in sleep is what we actually are. But we do know, we know we slept, don't we?
Yes.
So how can we know we slept if we were not aware of sleeping? Supposing, the general idea of people think that awareness is a switch. In waking and dream, that switch is switched on. In sleep, it gets switched off. So in sleep, we're not aware. That's the general idea. But how could we know there was even a state called sleep if we were not aware there? We are aware of 3 states. We're aware of 2 states in which we're aware of phenomena, waking and dream, and a 3rd state in which we're not aware of phenomena. If you are to, I slept well, I didn't have any dreams, I wasn't aware of anything. Yes, we weren't aware of anything in sleep. But we were aware in order to be able to say we weren't aware of anything. Supposing sleep was a state of total non-awareness, we would not be aware of any gap between successive states of waking and dream. We would not be aware of a 3rd state. The fact that we are aware of a state in which we are aware of nothing is because we were aware in that state. We weren't aware of anything, but we were aware. The confusion we have now about sleep, why sleep seems to us to be a lack of awareness, because we take awareness of things to be awareness. In other words, what Bhagavan would say, the sutarivu, the awareness of things, we take that to be awareness. We can use some English terms. Do you understand? You know what a transitive verb is?
Yes.
A transitive verb is a verb that takes an object. We can use the same verb to talk about transitive awareness. What Bhagavan calls sutarivu is transitive awareness. That is awareness of things. Our real nature is intransitive awareness. Awareness without an object, without any content. Just awareness. In sleep, we are not aware of anything except ourselves. We can't not be aware of it. Self-awareness is the very essence of awareness, because we can't be aware without being aware that we're aware. And in order to be aware that we're aware, we must be aware that we are. So, I am is the basic awareness is I am. Our awareness of our own being, our own existence, self-awareness. That is the real awareness. Awareness of things is something that comes and goes, so it's not real. So in sleep, there is no difference between us and Bhagavan. The differences appear to come when we rise as an ego.
Okay, I struggle with this because I assumed anybody who was, quotes, awakened, which we all are, except that we,
yes,
because we see things in duality, we don't recognize this.
Yes.
But I have always assumed that somebody was awakened and therefore saw everything as one in essence, would be conscious when of. Whereas in my sleep, as far as I know, I can never remember anything, so I'm not conscious.
We at least are conscious of waking, dream and sleep. We are conscious of passing.
I'm conscious that I've woken up.
But Bhagavan is not even conscious of this. But Bhagavan knows less. We know more than Bhagavan. But Bhagavan, there's one verse Bhagavan written in Unlearning Anubandham. He compares the jnani to someone sleeping in a cart. He said, just like a person sleeping in a cart is not aware whether the cart is moving, or whether the bullocks have come to a standstill, or whether the bullocks have been unyoked. So also the jnani, who is sleeping in this body, He said that metaphorically. But jnani who is sleeping in his body is not aware of the activities, the sleep, or the nishta, the samadhi. So we say Bhagavan is this body, and we say now Bhagavan is sleeping, now Bhagavan is answering questions, now Bhagavan seems to be in samadhi or whatever. This is all only in our outlook, because Bhagavan is sleeping in that body. He's not aware of any of this. We know a lot more than Bhagavan. Bhagavan knows only one thing, I am. We know so many things. So Bhagavan said, the knowledge we are seeking is not a knowledge which we are not aware of now. All of us are aware I am. That is all there is to know. We are confused about what I am because we confuse I am with this body. So all we have to do, there's no new knowledge for us to gain. We have to remove the wrong knowledge. And for whom is this wrong knowledge? For the ego. By removing the ego, what remains is jnana, is atma-jnana, which is what we experience even now. Is there ever a moment when we're not self-aware? We know I slept. That means to that extent we were aware of ourselves. What we were aware of in sleep is the pure self-awareness. That is present even now, but now it's obscured by our awareness of other things. Bhagavan is omniscient, he knows everything, because for him there's only one thing to know, that's I am.
Yes. I still find it terribly hard.
Of course it's hard, because what Bhagavan teaches us is turning all our beliefs, all our so-called knowledge on its head. Bhagavan says, knowledge of multiplicity is ignorance. Can it be? He asks, knowing anything other than oneself is only ignorance. Can it be knowledge? Real knowledge is only self-awareness.
I can understand it in theory, but in practice
we can't understand it in practice until we see what we actually are. But all Bhagavan teachings in words are all pointing. They're pointing us in the direction in which we should be looking. Where should we be looking? At ourselves. Because we are the ultimate, we are Brahman, we are the ultimate reality. But we are also, now we seem to be this ego. So our seeming to be this ego, that is the problem. So the only solution to this problem is to see what we actually are. For that we have to look at ourselves. So all Bhagavan's teachings, in whatever way he expressed it, they're all pointing us back to seeing ourselves.
Michael, the sleep concept, I think there is ignorance in sleep, and if we build that desireless sleep, that most of the time I don't desire to sleep, I just sleep because I am tired. I don't think that I need to sleep only for the sake of desire to sleep, like I need to sleep.
When you're tired, don't you desire to sleep?
No, there's no desire still.
If you were really, really tired, supposing you're being...
Suppose you go to sleep without a desire to sleep, you know.
Oh, we have... Supposing you haven't slept for 2 days, you may also be hungry, you haven't eaten for 2 days. Which will you give preference to, eating or sleeping? We'll sleep first and eat later. There's nothing we love, everyone loves sleep.
But if you have to be aware during sleep, then you have to give up the desire to sleep, or keep it as minimal as possible.
It's not exactly a desire to sleep. It's a love for sleep. We love sleep because sleep is our real nature. In the third verse of Ulunapti, Bhagavan ends, Nanatra annilai elakum oppam am. That is, it's agreeable to all. Is there anyone who dislikes sleep? That is one thing, because sleep is our real nature. We all love our real nature. But trouble is we don't identify that as our real nature. We think, oh, it's a state of darkness. Because why we label sleep as a state of darkness, a state of something not wholly satisfactory, because we've got so many desires for other things. That is the problem.
Because in Tripura Rahasya, the waking state, the three stages which they are saying,
yes,
it says always the sleep is the ignorant state.
That is the difference between Bhagavan and a lot of other things. Bhagavan has refined, what Bhagavan has taught us is the quintessence of Advaita philosophy. He has refined it. He's got rid of a lot of unnecessary concepts. In sleep, what remains is the Anandamaya kosha, it is said. But Bhagavan says, who is covered by by any of these koshas? It's the ego. It's not Brahman is never covered. It's the ego that covers itself. The ego takes these 5 sheaths to be itself. So these 5 sheaths only exist when the ego rises. So there's no Anandamaya kosha in sleep. What exists in sleep is pure self-awareness. So Bhagavan has refined many, that is, what was said in the traditional Vedanta, because people didn't question deeply enough, they gave an analysis that suited people. Bhagavan didn't always tell the ultimate truth to people. Bhagavan, according to the type of question people asked Bhagavan, he gave answers. So if you read books like Talks, you'll find Bhagavan saying so many things which are actually not at all in agreement with his teachings as expressed in Nanya, Uludunapti and places. Why he did that? Because that's all those people are ready to grasp. So he's not going to tell people more than they're ready to grasp. There's no point. So he tells people as much as, but he has, to those who asked deeper questions, he revealed the deeper truth. And what he's revealed in Uludunapatu, that is the very, very essence of his teachings. That is the real teaching of Bhagavan. More than any other work, Uludunapatu has expressed the real heart of Bhagavan's teachings. Why? Because he wrote it for Murugan. And Murugan asked a very simple question. Teach us the nature of reality and the means of attaining it. That's all Murugan was interested in. And so Bhagavan wrote Uludunapadu for him.
Can I just ask a question? They do lots of abhishekams for their devotees, so it happens at the Shiva temple in Tiru.
Yes.
They do lots of, probably daily abhishekams.
Yes.
What is the point of that? How does it benefit the devotee, regardless if you're a devotee of Ramana or whoever?
When people question Bhagavan about this, he said, well, we're all idol worshippers, so why should you question? If you're able to give up idol worship, then you can give up that type of idol worship. What is the idol we all worship? We all worship this body. What do we do to this body? We give it a bath, we dress it in clean clothes, we give it nice food. That's exactly what they're doing in temple. They take that linga or murti or whatever it is, they take that to be God, and supposing God came to your house, what would you do? If he was tired from his journey, you'll let him have a bath, and you'll give him nice clean clothes, and you'll give him food.
Would it benefit me though spiritually? That's basically what I want to know. It would make me feel good, and it would be important to treat the,
The thing is, all this, it's a way, so long as our mind is going outwards, God seems to be something other than ourselves. And by worshipping God, we are worshipping God with love. Many people who go to the temple and do all these things, they're not doing it for the love of God. They're doing it because They think if you worship God, God will do good for you. If you've got an exam to pass, if you go to a temple and worship, or if you go to a church, or if you go to a mosque or wherever, God will be pleased with you because you prayed to Him, and you'll pass your exam, or you'll get the job you wanted, or you'll get this or that. Or most people don't have love for God. Most of the people who go to churches, mosques, temples, they're not going there because they love God. They're going there because of what they think they can get from God. If you worship God for some reward, who do you love? God or the reward? So we don't really love God, most of us. But it is, if we are ready to give up all our desires, to ask nothing of God and worship God for the sake of God alone, that is true devotion to God. And by worshipping God in such a way, we purify the mind. Bhagavan says in Upadeshundya, by doing action without desire for the love of God, it purifies the mind and shows the way to liberation. Worshipping God is not the way to liberation. Going to temple or mosque or whatever is not the way to liberation. The way to liberation is to turn within. But until we have a certain degree of purity of mind, we will not be ready to accept that. We'll not be ready to accept that God is our own self. God is what we actually are. And that in order to know God, we have to turn within. So we need a certain degree of purity of mind to get that. That we get by worshipping God with devotion. Not worshipping God for the sake of something, worshipping God for the love of God. So Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, for example, he worshipped Kali with so much love. He wasn't expecting anything from Kali. For him, Kali was his mother. And he had so much love for her as his mother. So he worshipped her. So that is pure devotion. That will purify the mind. And when the mind is purified, then it will be very clear. How can I be anything other than God? If God alone is everything, if God alone exists, how can I be other than God? Even to apply I to this body, that is usurping what is God's. I belong only to God. So nothing is mine, everything is His. So I have to surrender myself entirely to God. And how to surrender myself entirely to God? What is the self I have to surrender? It's this little I. Then what is this little I? First we need to know it before we can surrender it.
So it's worship with no strings attached.
Yes, exactly. No strings attached.
Being the spoil sport.
There's a string attached here. The puppet master says stop.
He's the puppet master, not me.
Yes, but you're there. He has his deputy.